Hi everyone. A few months ago, you might remember I made a few journals, little small journals, and I made the cover out of fabric paper or paper cloth. And it's very sturdy and resilient. And a few of you had asked me if I would show how I made that. What I use for mine is a piece of muslin fabric, so just plain. This is just plain white muslin, thin fabric. And I also use tissue paper. This tissue paper I used for the outside. This was my little prototype, so I just used a piece of text tissue paper. I used something different for the little journals that I made. But the idea is you want to use thin papers and thin fabric. And the reason for that is you want to make sure that you saturate it really well, and the thinner it is, the easier that is. Oh, and another thing too, since I'm using tissue paper, I used a white fabric because I wanted to be able to see clearly the images that I was gluing onto onto both sides of it. If I were to use a beige colored muslin, then whatever you put on would look a little more vintagey because you're going to see the color of this through your tissue papers. So I just wanted to point that out, that if you want to keep it bright and more the natural, the actual color, use white fabric. And if you want a more vintagey look, you can always use a tea-stained white, coffee-stained white piece, or you can just use a piece that's already beige to start with. So I'm using white, and I'm using my little glue and water mixture, 75% glue, 25% water. I added a little bit more water to this because I did want it to be a little more watery so that it can saturate, into the fabric. So I'm just pouring a little bit onto the fabric here, and I'm just going to take a brush and I'm going to work it in to the fibers of the material here. Okay, and I found also, I wanted to mention, I found that it was easy to spread it often with a little gift card or credit card. It just kind of moves that, excuse me, it kind of moves that glue around a little bit and gets it into, to places where you need it. So that's a handy little trick. Oh, and also your surface that you're working on needs to be a plasticky surface. So I put down a piece of freezer paper here, and this is the shiny side. You want to use the shiny side because you want this to be able to peel up after it's dried, and you want it to peel up easily, and it will. So you can use a craft mat. I've done that before. I've also used a piece of plastic shelf liner kind of a thing. It's like a durable piece of plastic. You can use like a garbage bag, a trash bag like you use in the kitchen, or the green ones. Anything like that that has a plasticky surface, this stuff won't stick to it. So it'll stick kind of, while it's drying, and then once it's dry, you are able to peel it up. Okay, so I have my piece of fabric here pretty much wet, coated, and I'm going to take my piece of tissue, and there's a little bit of glue left on this card. I'm just going to wipe it on there just to use it. Okay, so I'm going to take my tissue paper. This time I'm using some of the green florals, and I'm going to lay that on the top of the fabric, just like that. And I'm going to take my card and gently press it down just to kind of work out air bubbles and such. And I'm not scraping this very hard because you know that this is tissue paper and it can tear. But you just want to make sure it's sitting down on that wet fabric very well. And you're going to have some wrinkles. I mean, paper wrinkles when it gets wet. That's just the way it goes. So don't be upset if you see wrinkles. That's perfectly fine, and it's nice to have the texture on your book when you're done. Okay, so I don't need quite as much glue this time because the tissue paper is already wet. I'm just kind of putting a little bit extra on to seal it in real good and make sure that it's gonna stick to the fabric. Okay. Now I'm gonna pick this up. I just taped this freezer paper down. I'm just gonna pick this up and move it out of the way. And I already have one of these dried and ready to go for the other side. So I've got a craft mat underneath here, and I'm gonna use the craft mat for the second part. All right, so here's the one I have that's all nice and dry. Okay, it's already pretty sturdy. You can hear it. It sounds like a good sturdy piece of paper. So on this one, I'm gonna add the other piece of tissue paper. So I'm gonna put some glue out. All right, and then I'm just gonna work it in like I did before. It just takes a few minutes to let it sit and kind of soak in. So if you go ahead and get it spread out all over, it will actually start to soak into the fabric. I've got a little bit more, I think, than I need here. And so I'll be able to scrape some of that up and put it back in my jar. But I want to leave it real wet at first and just let it soak in for a few minutes. And make sure you use a soft brush. You don't want to use anything that's going to tear your tissue paper when you're working on that side. So make sure your brush is soft. Okay. Let's see if we got any excess or how we're looking here. It's a little bit of excess. It's not terrible. But I can see that there is more on the surface than I probably need. If you very lightly scrape and you get it coming up on the card, then you'll know there's a little bit more than you need. And I'm just taking it and scraping it back into the jar. Okay. But having all that on there is what ensures that I got a good soaking of the fabric here. So I'm glad I did it. It's a good way to make sure that you get it wet enough. Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna lay the tissue paper onto the fabric. I'm gonna just start at the bottom here. Make sure that's on. There we go. Then I'll take my card and just gently, very gently, push out the air bubbles and make sure it's laying flat. And it is wrinkling up, which is, like I said, is perfectly normal. But you just want to make sure you get as many of the air bubbles out as you can so that it sticks properly to the fabric. Okay. All right, now on this side, I'm gonna coat the outside with some Collage Page just to give the exterior a little bit of shine. I do like it when it has a little bit of shine. Sometimes I want a matte finish, but this time I'm gonna use some Collage Page. You can use Mod Podge or any of those sealer type things. I've got some in a dish here with a tiny bit of water. Mine got a little bit thick, so I added some water to thin it out a little bit. And I'm just gonna cover the outside with the Collage Page. It's okay if this coating is a little bit heavier than the glue coating, because that way you get a nice little shine. Okay. All right. So once it's coated, you want to just leave it alone and let it dry. Let it dry 100% completely dry. I'll make sure this has got enough underneath there. Okay. move this one over now. I have one that I coated with some napkins. Same thing, it's a little bit bigger. It's a piece of muslin with a napkin over the top, or, you know, a napkin on one side and a napkin on the other side. And I just wanted to show you how you'll see that there's wrinkles. There's wrinkles in this. It feels very textural. It's, look, see the wrinkles? I love it. And I don't mind that they're there, and it does feel so nice. So this side is more matte finished because I coated it with the glue mixture. And then this side is has more of a shine to it because I used the Collage Page mixture on that. You can see the shine right there, okay? So all I do is I take this, and because I'm making book covers, I take this and fold it in half. And this is just kind of roughly folded in half, but this way I get one edge, which is the folded edge. I get one nice straight edge. And I use that edge to cut the rest of my book cover out. So I'll show you what I mean. All right, so I use my nice straight edge along the top, see, and it butts up against the cutter. Make sure you cut your fabric and your tissues or napkins, whatever you're using. Make sure you cut them a little larger than what you actually need. And that way you can trim out and get a nice straight edge. No matter if you put these on a little crooked or whatever, you've got plenty of usable space in the center. So I'm going to just trim this off here. I haven't used this cutter for this yet. It's the first time I use this one. My other cutter does great. It's one of the where you slide the blade. Okay, it's perfectly cut right there. So then I flip it over and I do the same thing on this side. There we go. See if my other one does better, and you can see what I mean. This is a different one than I normally use too, but I want to see if the sliding if the sliding blade works just as well as my other one does. So I opened it up so it doesn't have to go through 2 layers because this is a very small trimmer. So I'm just placing it here. Okay, so I'm just gonna take it right through. See? Beautiful. No problem with cutting it at all. So I'm going to trim this one. Okay. Just like that. So then you have a nice, straight, square, even book cover. I love it. And it's beautifully decorated on the inside. It's very sturdy and stable. So here's how it ends up looking when I make it into a little journal. We've got the cover. I decorated it a little bit. I made a little butterfly out of some ribbon and some embroidery floss and attached that with some rickrack. I stitched it with some black waxed linen thread, and I filled it up with some various papers. Some printer papers that are colored and some other little papers. So I'm going to take my little journal and I want to make some little mini collages. I think it'll be so fun on these small pages. The journal ends up being 4x4. The cover's 4x4. And the pages are a little bit smaller. You can see where they set in just a little bit on 3 of the sides. But I think some little collages on these pages are going to be adorable. So I wanted you guys to know that I've made up a few of these that I'm going to put in my Etsy store if you're interested in a little one that's already made. And I'm going to be including some little goodies too that you may or may not want to use in your little collage journal or whatever you want to use it for. I think it'll be fun. I've got some new stickers that I put together. So yeah, just a lot of fun. And these will be in my Etsy store. So these are the little bonus items, and this is what the journal looks like. So check that out if you're interested. And I hope this helps to give you an idea of how simple it is to make the fabric paper covers. And we will see you again soon in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.